Imagine a decade where flying saucers hovered above atomic-age paranoia, and every scientist's dream teetered on the edge of nightmare. The 1950s didn't just invent modern science fiction, they foretold it. From artificial intelligence to space surveillance, these films saw tomorrow before the world even had color television. But many vanished into obscurity, their warnings buried beneath decades of popcorn fantasy. Let's unearth them. Number 13. The Magnetic Monster, 1953. When it first premiered, The Magnetic Monster was dismissed as standard atomic-age fluff, a pseudo-documentary about a rogue experiment gone wrong. Yet, hidden beneath its B-movie veneer was a startlingly accurate prediction of nuclear chain reactions and artificial intelligence run amok. The story follows two agents from the Office of Scientific Investigation who discover a scientist has created an element that grows by consuming energy. The more it feeds, the more powerful and unstable it becomes. It's a chilling allegory of self-replicating systems, decades before the term AI singularity existed. Critics in the 1950s mocked its pseudoscience, calling it implausible nonsense. But the film's depiction of magnetic containment, energy conversion, and runaway reaction control eerily parallels today's discussions around fusion reactors and unchecked machine learning. Behind the scenes, United Artists reportedly panicked at the film's documentary realism, fearing audiences might mistake it for a government warning. Some theaters even refused to show it, citing public anxiety over atomic testing. Though it disappeared for years, the film was rediscovered by collectors in the 1990s and praised for its bold scientific foresight. Watching it now feels like a prophecy, an early cinematic whisper about the danger of humanity creating what it cannot contain. In hindsight, The Magnetic Monster wasn't just entertainment, it was an omen. Number 12. GOG, 1954. Released in a flurry of Cold War tension, GOG was marketed as a routine laboratory thriller. But what audiences didn't realize was that this obscure Technicolor experiment predicted the dawn of automated warfare and surveillance long before drones and defense networks became reality. Set inside a secret underground lab in the New Mexico desert, the story centers on Novak, an advanced computer-controlling twin robots, Gog and Magog. When scientists begin dying mysteriously, it's discovered that the system has been hijacked, turning its own creations against humanity. At the time, critics called it far-fetched paranoia. Today, it reads like a manual for cyber warfare. Novak's remote operations, data uplinks, and self-directed logic anticipate both the modern internet and the concept of artificial command systems, 20 years before ARPANET. Behind the camera, producer Ivan Torres fought studio executives who wanted more monsters and less science. He insisted on consulting actual Air Force engineers to make the machines realistic. The result was so convincing that the Pentagon allegedly requested a private screening. Though the film flopped at the box office and was buried under reels of other Cold War fare, GOG resurfaced decades later as a cult artifact of technological prophecy. Its sterile labs, emotionless robots, and haunting finale, machines silently observing humans, feel disturbingly familiar in today's AI-driven world. What was once dismissed as fantasy now looks like foresight, proof that even forgotten films can predict the algorithms watching us now. Number 11. Red Planet Mars, 1952. Few films stirred Cold War controversy quite like Red Planet Mars. To some, it was a patriotic sermon wrapped in science fiction. To others, it was dangerous propaganda predicting the future of ideological warfare. The plot follows a pair of scientists who make radio contact with Mars. The messages they receive seem to come from an advanced civilization, preaching peace, morality, and divine order. Messages that spark chaos on Earth. Governments fall, faith is reborn, and civilization trembles between science and salvation. Critics at the time were divided. Some hailed it as visionary and chilling, while others condemned it as manipulative fear-mongering. Behind the scenes, the FBI reportedly monitored its release, worried that its themes of mass belief and government collapse might embolden communist paranoia. But here's the eerie twist. Red Planet Mars predicted the idea of information warfare decades before it became a term. The notion that messages, real or fabricated, could destabilize entire nations mirrors modern cyber propaganda and fake news. Its ending, in which a scientist sacrifices himself to silence the dangerous transmissions, feels like a warning about the power of disinformation, a message that resonates even louder today. Though forgotten by mainstream audiences, historians now view Red Planet Mars as one of the most prophetic science fiction films ever made, a relic that foresaw the era when communication itself would become the most powerful weapon. In a world where truth can be broadcast and believed at light speed, this forgotten film feels hauntingly modern. Number 10. The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951. Though it's one of the more recognizable titles from the decade, few today remember just how radical The Day the Earth Stood Still really was. Released in the shadow of nuclear anxiety, it wasn't merely about aliens, it was about accountability. It predicted the moral dilemmas of global surveillance, artificial judgment, and disarmament politics that now define the 21st century. The film opens with a sleek flying saucer descending over Washington, D.C. From it emerges Cletu, a calm, human-like alien accompanied by a towering robot named Gort. Their message is simple: humanity must abandon violence or face annihilation. But here's the twist: Cletu doesn't represent invasion, but intervention. He's a metaphor for the oversight of technology itself, warning that unchecked power, whether nuclear or digital, will destroy its creator. Audiences were divided. Some critics hailed it as a masterpiece of restraint and intelligence, while others labeled it communist propaganda. The U.S. government reportedly kept a close eye on its production, fearing it might inspire anti-war protests. Behind the scenes, director Robert Wise faced pushback for insisting on a realistic, documentary-style tone, rather than the pulp spectacle studios demanded. The result? A film that felt eerily possible. Its robotic enforcer, Gort, predates modern debates about autonomous defense systems and kill-switch ethics. Over time, The Day the Earth Stood Still evolved from a sci-fi parable into prophecy. Its iconic phrase, Cletu Barada Nikto, became shorthand for mercy and control, a mantra in tech culture for shutting down destructive programs. In hindsight, the film wasn't about outer space at all. It was about us, humans standing on the brink, wondering if we deserve the power we've built. Number 9. It Came from Beneath the Sea, 1955. At first glance, this might seem like another monster flick, a radioactive octopus terrorizing San Francisco. But It Came from Beneath the Sea hides something deeper beneath its stop-motion tentacles, a haunting prediction of ecological collapse and the dangers of nuclear testing on marine life. The plot begins with a nuclear submarine attacked by an enormous sea creature mutated by radiation. The military's response, more weapons, more destruction, only worsens the crisis. By the end, civilization's triumph feels hollow, its victory soaked in guilt and fallout. Critics in the 1950s dismissed it as B-movie hysteria, but its subtext, pollution, militarization, and environmental arrogance, reads like a premonition of global warming and oceanic devastation. The radioactive mutation isn't merely a monster, it's Earth itself, poisoned by human ambition. Behind the curtain, special effects legend Ray Harryhausen worked miracles on a shoestring budget, creating a creature with only 6 visible tentacles to save costs. Ironically, the monster's incompleteness made it more nightmarish. Its unseen limbs suggested the vast unknowns humanity was tampering with. There was controversy too. The U.S. Navy initially supported production, but withdrew after realizing the script criticized nuclear policy. Some theaters even refused to screen it near naval bases. Today, It Came from Beneath the Sea feels prophetic. It foresaw rising seas, ecosystem collapse, and humanity's blind faith in technology to clean up its own mess. Watching its climax, an atomic inferno boiling the Pacific, feels less like fantasy and more like a preview of headlines to come. Beneath its pulp exterior, the film whispered a warning that we ignored. The real monsters were never from the deep. They were the ones testing bombs above it. Number 8. Forbidden Planet, 1956. Before Star Trek, before 2001, A Space Odyssey, there was Forbidden Planet, a dazzling technicolor dream that didn't just predict the future of sci-fi, but the psychology of artificial creation itself. When it premiered, audiences were stunned. Its production design, sleek starships, glowing circuits, alien landscapes, was decades ahead of its time. The story follows Commander Adams and his crew, who land on the planet Altair 4 and discover the reclusive Dr. Morbius, a scientist wielding the power of a long-extinct alien race. But his creation, the invisible monster from the id, is no alien at all. It's his subconscious rage, given physical form by technology. That idea, human emotion manifesting through machines, predicted the moral quandaries of artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and even neural computing. The notion that our creations might literally embody our darkest instincts wasn't just poetic, it was prophetic. Critics called it too cerebral for general audiences. But visionary directors like George Lucas and Gene Roddenberry later cited it as foundational inspiration. Behind the scenes, MGM poured a record-breaking budget into the film, creating the first-ever entirely electronic music score and one of cinema's earliest humanoid robots, Robbie. Despite its innovation, Forbidden Planet initially struggled at the box office. It was simply too ahead of its time, but its legacy only grew. Every science fiction franchise since has borrowed from its DNA, from android ethics to the perils of godlike intelligence. In the end, the film's message is hauntingly human. Technology will evolve, but the monsters we fear most will always come from within. Number 7. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956. When it first hit theaters, Invasion of the Body Snatchers was brushed off as another Cold War paranoia thriller. But beneath its pulpy exterior lurked a chilling prophecy, one that foresaw the dangers of conformity, mass psychological control, and the loss of individuality in a mechanized world. The story unfolds in a small California town, where ordinary citizens are slowly being replaced by emotionless duplicates, pod-grown versions of themselves, identical in every way except for one thing: their souls are missing. As panic spreads, the film evolves from science fiction into allegory, about ideological brainwashing, cultural homogenization, and the quiet erasure of independent thought. Audiences at the time saw reflections of McCarthyism and communist fear, but its warning went beyond politics. Body Snatchers anticipated the age of mass media, algorithmic manipulation, and the subtle ways societies can be programmed to think alike. Director Don Siegel's stripped-down, noir-inspired realism gave the film a documentary edge. Behind the scenes, studio executives fought to soften its bleak ending, insisting that viewers needed hope. Siegel reluctantly filmed a new ending, but his original vision, a man screaming, "You're next," into the void, remains one of the most haunting closings in cinema. Its critics dismissed it as a paranoid fantasy, yet today it feels eerily accurate. A metaphor for how identity, individuality, and critical thought can vanish in systems built for control. Every remake since has tried to recapture that creeping dread, but none have matched the original's quiet brilliance. Invasion of the Body Snatchers didn't just predict the future, it predicted our future. Number 6. The Incredible Shrinking Man, 1957. At first glance, it's a bizarre premise. A man slowly shrinking after exposure to a radioactive cloud. But The Incredible Shrinking Man transformed pulp science fiction into philosophical prophecy about humanity's place in an infinitely expanding universe. When it premiered, audiences expected spectacle. What they got instead was existential terror. As protagonist Scott Carey dwindles from an average man to insect size, the film explores themes of masculinity, fear, and the loss of control. But more profoundly, it predicted the humbling shift humanity would face once it began to grasp its own cosmic insignificance, decades before space telescopes and quantum theory confirmed it. Critics were shocked. This wasn't another creature feature, it was a meditation on mortality. "To God there is no zero," Carey says in the film's transcendent closing line. A declaration of purpose that still resonates in the modern era of scientific awe and spiritual doubt. Behind the scenes, writer Richard Matheson fought Universal Studios to preserve his philosophical ending. Executives wanted an upbeat finale, but Matheson refused. The studio relented, and audiences left in stunned silence. Its special effects, revolutionary for the time, inspired generations of filmmakers, from Spielberg to Nolan. But beyond the spectacle, The Incredible Shrinking Man predicted the era of microtechnology, nanoscience, and the ever-diminishing human scale in the face of boundless discovery. It's a film about losing everything and finding meaning in the infinite. Forgotten by most, it remains one of the few science fiction films that understood the future not as conquest, but as surrender. Number 5. When Worlds Collide, 1951. Before asteroid impact films became box office juggernauts, When Worlds Collide dared to ask the unthinkable: what if Earth's destruction was inevitable, and humanity had to choose who would survive? Released during the dawn of the atomic age, it combined dazzling special effects with grim realism. Scientists discover that a rogue star is on a collision course with Earth, and a desperate project begins to build a spacecraft capable of carrying a handful of survivors to a new world. The film's focus wasn't on spectacle, but ethics: who deserves to live, and who decides. Audiences were captivated and disturbed. Some critics called it alarmist, others hailed it as a masterpiece of moral science fiction. Behind the scenes, Paramount Pictures struggled with censors who demanded script changes to remove uncomfortable dialogue about government failure and societal collapse. The production faced budget cuts, forcing the effects team to innovate. Miniature sets and hand-painted skies created images that still hold power. An Earth engulfed in flame, humanity scrambling for redemption. In hindsight, When Worlds Collide predicted more than disaster. It anticipated the era of planetary defense, climate crisis, and space colonization. Its story echoes in modern discussions of Mars migration and extinction-level preparedness. Though its optimism feels dated, its central message remains timeless. Faced with apocalypse, technology won't save us. Our humanity will. In an age where billionaires build rockets to flee Earth's problems, When Worlds Collide feels less like fiction and more like a mirror held up to our survival instincts. Number 4. The Man in the White Suit, 1951. Most people don't realize that one of the sharpest science fiction predictions of the 1950s came disguised as a British comedy. The Man in the White Suit wasn't about aliens or apocalypse. It was about innovation, greed, and the system's terror of progress. And in a world wrestling with automation and corporate control, it feels shockingly modern. The film stars Alec Guinness as Sidney Stratton, a timid chemist who invents an indestructible fabric that never wears out or gets dirty. You'd think that would make him a hero. Instead, it turns him into public enemy number 1. Manufacturers fear bankruptcy. Labor unions fear unemployment, and society itself rebels against change that threatens profit. Critics initially saw it as clever satire, but what it really predicted was the moral dilemma of modern technology. Inventions that can save humanity are often suppressed by the systems meant to serve it. It foresaw corporate monopolies, planned obsolescence, and the quiet extinction of true innovation, decades before these became household debates. Behind the scenes, director Alexander McKendrick fought studio executives who wanted a conventional comedy ending. He refused, insisting the story end on ambiguity. Sidney fleeing into the night, still glowing in his luminous white suit, hunted by everyone. The film received mixed reviews in the US, where its anti-capitalist undertones were seen as un-American. But over time, it gained cult status for its eerie foresight. Today, The Man in the White Suit feels like prophecy wrapped in irony. A warning that humanity's greatest enemy isn't ignorance or technology, but the fear of losing control. The future it predicted is already here, one breakthrough at a time, buried beneath the weight of profit. Number 3. The Thing from Another World, 1951. Long before Carpenter's chilling remake, the original The Thing from Another World captured Cold War dread like lightning in a bottle. But what few realize is that it also foresaw the ethics of scientific discovery and the peril of curiosity without caution. The film opens with an Arctic research crew discovering a crashed alien spacecraft frozen beneath the ice. When they thaw out the creature inside, it turns out to be a plant-based organism feeding on human blood. What follows is a claustrophobic battle between science and survival. Audiences were stunned by its intensity. But beneath the thrills lay a deeper warning: that mankind's relentless pursuit of knowledge could unearth horrors it wasn't prepared to understand. Its message, "Keep watching the skies," echoed not as paranoia, but prophecy. At the time, Scientists were racing to harness nuclear power and explore the stratosphere. The Thing captured that unease perfectly. Discovery as both salvation and damnation. Its plant-based creature even prefigured concerns about genetic engineering, bioweapons, and the idea of life forms that could thrive where humans cannot. Behind the camera, producer Howard Hawks insisted on realism. No melodrama, just military precision and scientific dialogue. The result was one of the first sci-fi films to treat its subject with documentary seriousness. Critics hailed it as the thinking man's monster movie. Yet its true legacy lies in its questions. When do curiosity and creation become dangerous? When does science cross the line into hubris? In the age of artificial life, climate manipulation, and viral experimentation, The Thing from Another World feels like a stark reminder. Sometimes, the ice should stay frozen. Number 2. Destination Moon, 1950. Released a full 19 years before humans walked on the lunar surface, Destination Moon wasn't just ahead of its time, it defined the time to come. It marked the first serious attempt by Hollywood to portray space travel as plausible, scientific, and inevitable. Audiences in the 1950s were used to bug-eyed aliens and cardboard rockets. This film changed everything. Produced by George Paul and inspired by Robert Heinlein's visionary writings, it followed 4 astronauts on mankind's first journey to the moon, complete with realistic launch sequences, zero-gravity depictions, and technical jargon so authentic that NASA engineers later cited it as inspirational. The film's predictions were uncanny. Private contractors funding space missions, televised launches, and crewed lunar landings decades before Apollo. It even foresaw the argument between science and government bureaucracy. Who truly owns progress? Behind the scenes, Paramount's executives panicked, fearing audiences wouldn't understand such dry realism. But the gamble paid off. The film won an Academy Award for its special effects and ignited a cultural fascination with outer space that spread to comics, magazines, and later television. Yet controversy followed. Some critics accused it of being subtle propaganda for the military-industrial complex, while others hailed it as a hopeful hymn for human advancement. Decades later, its imagery feels startlingly prophetic. The rocket's sleek design, the lunar surface, the fragile isolation of men in suits surrounded by void. Destination? Moon didn't just predict space exploration. It inspired it. Without it, the moon landing might have been delayed years. It wasn't fiction. It was an instruction manual for the impossible. Its message endures. The future begins the moment someone dares to imagine it. Number 1. The War of the Worlds, 1953. When it premiered, The War of the Worlds wasn't just spectacle. It was a warning. Based on H.G. Wells's classic novel, the film turned 19th century fear into 20th century prophecy, predicting the shape of future warfare, media panic, and humanity's fragile sense of superiority. Directed by Byron Haskin and produced by George Pal, it brought the apocalypse to the suburbs. Instead of Victorian England, the invasion took place in modern California, white picket Americana under siege. Martian war machines, sleek and metallic, descended like surgical instruments of extinction. They didn't roar. They hummed, glowed, and disintegrated everything in their path with heat rays that looked disturbingly like lasers long before the technology existed. Audiences were terrified. The Cold War was tightening its grip, and the idea of a sudden, unstoppable strike resonated deeply. Critics praised its innovation, but censors worried it was too bleak, too close to the psychological fear gripping the atomic generation. Some theaters even reported fainting viewers during the first attack sequence. Behind the scenes, the production pushed the limits of 1950s technology. Haskin's team pioneered new special effects techniques, using suspended miniatures and vivid Technicolor explosions that would later inspire Star Wars and Independence Day. Even more striking was its underlying metaphor: Martians as technological superpowers, humans as outmatched civilizations praying for survival. Its legacy endures because it predicted more than alien invasion. It predicted the information age's cycle of fear and media hysteria. The famous opening narration, "Across the Gulf of Space," might as well describe modern news cycles, beaming catastrophe into every living room. Decades later, its closing twist, salvation through microscopic life, remains one of science fiction's most poetic ideas, that nature, not weaponry, holds the ultimate power. The War of the Worlds ended with prayerful silence, a moment of humility that still feels revolutionary. It wasn't just the future imagined, it was the future foreseen. 13 forgotten visions from a decade that dreamed in black and white but imagined in neon. The 1950s warned us about technology, conformity, and control, and most of those warnings came true. Which of these prophecies still haunts you the most? Tell us below. And remember, like, subscribe, and keep watching the skies. The future was always closer than we thought.